To East Hampton Town Trustees. We are live, being recorded and being streamed. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the East Hampton Town Trustees for August 12th, 2024. And I'd like to open with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Arlene, can you do roll call, please?
John Aldred.
Yes, here.
Francis Bob.
Here.
David Cataletta.
Here.
Patrice Goldfish. Here. Ben Dollinger. Tim Garneau.
Here.
Jim Grimes.
Yes.
Celia Josephson.
Here.
And William Taylor.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we'll open up with the public comment. Rick Whalen is here on behalf of the homeowners off Crooked Highway. Rick?
Thank you, Francis. Members of the trustees, Richard Whalen from Whalen Firework PLLC. I represent the Crooked Highway Homeowners Coalition. Two of the members or residents there are President Ben Feinstone to the right and Flavio Bartman to the left. So, as you know, in January 2023, we made an application. We submitted a petition for a road improvement district to the town board. Under town law, I think it's town law 100, 200, whatever. The town can create a road improvement district for the improvement of a private or otherwise non-town owned road. And the property owners are charged for the work involved in designing the road improvements and then making those road improvements, and they can pay them back over time through their taxes. The problem has been, although the town board doesn't seem unwilling to do it, the highway superintendent, Steve Lynch, does not want to take the road into the system. And his argument is that he's so short-staffed right now in the highway department that he can't take in or isn't willing to take in any other roads, at least until they are able to fix his, personnel problems. So the homeowners have decided the road is in bad shape right now, very potholed, standing water a lot of the time. It's a mess. In fact, I will show it to you right now. I got an email of a photograph of a bunch of packages, literally, that fell off the back of a Federal Express truck and was sitting in a puddle of water at the road. That was, I guess, in the last week or so. They did recover the packages for, I guess they told Federal Express. So the road needs to be repaired, not repaired, it needs to be paved. So it's a maintainable road. Right now it's a dirt road. Just, by the way, just to make sure that everyone knows what we're talking about. Crooked Highway is an area up in Northwest Woods. It exists on both sides of Bull Path. So we're talking about the section that's very close to Swamp Road, a little bit south of Swamp Road, on the northeast side of Bull Path. You can drive and makes a right turn and eventually terminates with private driveways that go into the woods and access the homes of the various people in there. But it's the northernmost section of Crooked Highway. There's a portion of that that goes back towards Bull Path that is completely unopened and is trees. We're not talking about that. We're only talking about the part that is actually a road today. But it's a very, very bad road in very poor condition. It's not something that anyone's maintaining. The highway department doesn't maintain it. I think that my client did some work within the last year on it. It's back to where it was before. So it's not going to be maintainable. So, we're basically here to, I guess, ask your permission to improve it. Just so you know, as you know, I'm sure, in recent times, the last 20 or 30 years, the trustees have required grants of access easement before anyone goes and improves a lot that takes access from a trustee road. That wasn't always the practice, but it has been for the last, I think, 25 or 30 years, maybe even longer than that, actually. Of the properties involved here, only 2 of them actually have access easements, because I guess the other ones that were built on, there are 7 lots involved. The others were built on before that practice existed. So we did a title report. Ben's lot, Mr. Feinstein's lot, he has an access easement that goes back to 2013. And then Kyle Woodrick, who's another person involved who's not here tonight, his access easement goes back to 1986. So the title report, the 2 access easements don't say the same thing. The first access easement said that if there are any improvements to be made, the town, the owner can make them up to private road specifications. That's taken from the town subdivision regulations. They don't have private road specifications anymore. It's either lane specifications, which today are 20 foot in width for pavement, or 24 foot, which is a regular subdivision road. And then the later access easement, which is from 2013, which is Mr. Feinstein's, that actually says that the property owner can improve the road as long as it doesn't go beyond 18 feet, which were the old lane specifications. He has the right to improve the road without any further permission from the trustees. But obviously, we want you to know what's going on. We want you to know what we're doing. I haven't actually discussed with my clients whether they want to go beyond lane specs. In other words, go beyond 18 feet. I don't know that they would. The wider the road, the more expensive it is. But at the time that these, the two easements were crafted, I think the trustees had in mind that pavement could be 18 feet wide. Technically, if you look at the lane specifications in the subdivision regulations today, it's 20 feet of paving. But we basically want to get your blessing. We would put in drainage, we would pave it. I've had a conversation with your attorney. I think he probably would want some sort of an indemnification for the road work itself, while the work is going on, to make sure that, you're not responsible for damages during the road work. And I've discussed it with my clients. They're fine with that. So I see it as a fairly straightforward request.
I have a question. Are you going to pursue bringing us into the highway system?
No, it would still,
Some future.
Yeah, I mean, it could be done in the future, but again, the highway superintendent essentially has to agree. He basically has a veto on this. If he's not going to take it in, it doesn't go in. But yeah, I would say this, in the long term, it would make sense, even once they pave the road. If the highways department's not maintaining it after 20 or 30 years, you're going to have pothole, you're going to have maintenance to do.
Well, my further question is, how does the road that you're proposing fit with the requirements of the highway superintendent?
So it's not under his jurisdiction. Actually, the first easement actually said, subject to the oversight of the town highway superintendent or the town engineer. The highway superintendent has no jurisdiction over private roads. And it's not a town project, so really the town engineer, it's not like not that the town has an in-house town engineer anymore, but we wouldn't go to them either. We would basically develop the specifications like you would for a private driveway.
I think John.
Hey, Rick.
Well, more
Yep.
point than that. Hang on, Jim, real quick. While John, just further on John's question, I think what he's saying is, would you be planning to design the road in a way so that it meets town specs, so that it can be
Right.
future adopted into the system? Whereas, would you be pigeonholed, or would you not be able to get into the system if you do set it up the way you're planning on as a private?
No, I think the idea would be that this would be a road that it would be to our interest to build a road that could be accepted into the highway system. I don't know whether the highway superintendent, first of all, there's two real requirements for acceptance into the highway system. In the modern road, unless you get an exemption from the State Department of Transportation, the right-of-way has to be at least 50 feet wide. It's not a problem here. It's 99 feet wide and then some. The other requirement is really that it be improved. The town and the highway superintendent traditionally will not accept a road unless it is a finished road at the time of acceptance. Because obviously the highway superintendent does want to take something in that immediately requires work. So if we pave it, I don't know whether it would make a difference in the town, whether it's 18 feet or 20 feet wide. If we were building a subdivision road today with planning board approval, it would have to be 20 feet wide. But one of the easements that we do have right now from the trustees says it shall not exceed 18 feet.
Okay. And are you planning on having it professionally engineered with drainage so that there are no future problems
Oh,
with the
yeah.
road and its layout?
Oh, yeah, no,
Have you already selected a
professional
company?
contractors, we want the road built right. So that two things, number one, so that the people living there don't have future maintenance burdens like flooding and breaking up the asphalt. And secondly, because I think the long-term goal would still be eventually to have the town own it, because we would like the town to maintain it someday.
If you build it at 18 feet and the standard.
Town's not gonna take, hey, John, the town will take will not take that road into the town system at 18 feet. We've had, over the years, we've had this issue has come up in the past, and I forget what the name of the road was. It was done many years ago as part of a subdivision. The road did not meet the town's spec as far as the width of pavement, and it also did not meet the town's spec as far as the drainage. So you sound like you really articulated that, protect yourself in the future for being disqualified on different grounds, that the road you've built doesn't meet the town specs. I think my feeling would keep it at the 20 feet, even if that meant our board gives you some sort of an updated easement speaking to the 20-foot width.
Yeah, we would need that then, because the one easement that's specific says 18 feet. I will look into that. Jim may very well be right. I should check with the town and see if someone over there can tell me. I can talk to Steve Lynch too, and just theoretically, is there some minimum he would require if he were taking the road into the highway system? I mean, he'll probably be asked within the next year, he'll probably be asked to take into the highway system the new Cantwell Court that the town is building, off Montauk Highway for the affordable housing. And I would imagine that it's obviously meeting the subdivision specifications because it's a subdivision. I presume they're building that to 20 feet wide, but I can find out.
It would make sense for us to give you the easement for another 2 feet.
Yeah.
This is more a question for Chris, I think, that I have is, would it be in our interest to give the people who don't have access easements at this point? So everybody has a trustee access easement?
The short answer is yes. It would behoove the trustees to have everybody underneath the easement access, just to protect us from a liability standpoint. I think it would be important to have everybody, yeah. But I also think it would be important, Rick, if you are going to decide, there seems like there's more planning that needs to be done. I think sort of an unqualified trustee approval might not work here. I think understanding what the plan is for this road, understanding that it does meet town specs, getting an opportunity to review the engineer's review and proposal to do the work. So I think the trustees as owners of the land should have a little bit more of a role of involvement in this process versus just approval here today.
Yeah, and I wasn't necessarily looking for you. What I really would like to know today is, does it sound like if the things that we're talking about are ironed out, is it something that you would approve? I'm expecting that you would, but I agree with what Chris just said. I'm sure you would want and should have more information from us. But generally speaking, I want to know that, you're on board with the idea.
Yeah, I can support it, absolutely.
Okay. All right, so let us go back, figure out what we need to do, figure out who's going to do it. Then we'll be able to provide that to you. And then, as Chris said, it's probably a good idea then to have everyone, first of all, probably have the same access easement, that all matches, and it would have to be updated to comport with what we're talking about now.
Okay.
Is there any way that the extension of Crooked Highway can be developed?
Not, you mean where it's unimproved, the unopened section? Not really, because everybody who's got a lot in that area now has access. So the continuation, in other words, this section of Crooked Highway actually swings back to Bullpath and then crosses over it. But the swing back area that's unopened does not need to be opened. That road is, everyone in the area already has driveway access.
Very good.
Okay?
Thanks, Rick.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks, Rick.
May we be excused?
Yeah, of course. Molly, are you here on behalf of Kim?
It's, Cornell is here.
Oh, there's Kim. I'm sorry. I didn't see you there earlier. Okay.
Yeah, we have a few
Kim
of us
Barber.
here.
Okay, I have Kim Barber next.
Yes, thank you. I'm here. Molly's the real project lead on the
project that we're going to talk about overall tonight. And I have our colleague Kim Manzo, who's our habitat and macroalgae expert on board too. So as you know, we have a permit request into you for consideration, and we just wanted to give a little overview of the project in general in terms of what we're up to in Hog Creek, so it could lay the framework and give some context to our actual request that has to do with the permit. And again, as I mentioned, Molly's really been heading up a lot of the groundwater and PRB related work. So we wanted to have Molly start off, and then me and Kim will chime in a little bit later as it relates to what we would like to do with the Ulva collection event we're hoping to do next month. So unless there's any questions off the bat, I could hand it over to Molly. She's sharing her screen and could get us started from.
If I could just chime in and just give a little background to the board of where we've been on this already.
Yeah.
The board has a presentation on this overall project. There's 3 phases to this project back in 2018. And we permitted the initial work then, which was sort of an evaluation of the nitrogen that's coming into the creek from around the Clearwater and the Lionhead side. And now what's being requested is the work for phase 2 of the project, which is basically siting of the, evaluating the siting of PRBs that are proposed based on the initial work that they did, and then the Ulva collection project that Kim has referenced.
Are we going to be asked to approve the phase 2 of the PRB project tonight?
Well, the PRB project itself is an upland project and not within our jurisdiction. There's some evaluation of, what's going on with the groundwater as it comes up in the bottom of the harbor. That's part of the PRB evaluation process that is in the harbor and is part of the application.
Of this application. Okay.
Okay, that's it. Go ahead.
All right, thank you both for that introduction. So my name is Molly Graffam, and I work for Cornell Cooperative Extension Marine Program. So Kim and I will be talking about the phase 2 of this project, which involves PRB site characterization, PRB design, and then the Ulva removal, the Ulva assessment and planning, an education and outreach program, and then an Ulva harvest. So just to give you a little bit of background, we've been using this nitrogen remediation siting strategy for a while now. We've had success with various projects, and a lot of them have been in East Hampton. Listed here, specifically in Tanbar Creek, we identified a few nitrogen plumes and then installed a carbon injection style PRB, which is currently being monitored. In Georgia Pond, we recently, we are in the PRB design phase and recently submitted a proposal to do the installation and monitoring at the Georgia Pond Preserve. And then in Southampton, we have some projects as well. Specifically at Sag Pond, we have a pilot PRB that's currently being monitored. And all of this work really starts with our nitrogen remediation siting strategy. And some of the anticipated benefits to Hog Creek. Well, just in general, we know that each water body is unique. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. And the siting strategy that we use is ideal for defining shoreline areas and tailoring an approach to each unique water body and each unique shoreline. We rank areas according to direct measurements. And this project, fully implemented, will reduce legacy and non-point nitrogen to improve surface water quality using shoreline permeable reactive barriers and with nutrient bioextraction, including the Ulva harvest. The deliverables for this project are a PRB site characterization and design report, which includes the property that we would prioritize and select for installation, the dimensions of the proposed system, and then the anticipated pounds of nitrogen removed per year, as well as the ulva harvest aspect with an education and outreach program included with that. So this project, the field work, has started back in 2020 and has been ongoing. We prioritized areas where we found high nitrogen loading, and those areas are highlighted here. They were in the headwaters at a town-owned property at like the southernmost part of Hog Creek. We found high nitrogen loading in the northeast corner, highlighted in blue, and then along the western shoreline. So these are priority areas where site characterization for permeable reactive barriers has been ongoing. One of the reasons why we're so interested in permeable reactive barriers is that they can reduce nitrate from any source. As long as it's in the form of nitrate, permeable reactive barriers are great at removing nitrate. So in the Peconic estuary, there's been studies that have shown that septic-derived nitrogen is the primary source of nitrogen, but there's also agriculture, there's residential fertilization, golf courses, atmospheric deposition, and as long as nitrogen is in the form of nitrate, PRBs that are installed along the shoreline can reduce that contaminated groundwater and prevent that nitrogen from going into the surface water. So this is what our work has been geared towards, citing where these should go to properly place them. And we use some terms: submarine groundwater discharge. This is the flow of groundwater and recirculated seawater through permeable sediments. And this happens naturally because there's a hydraulic gradient between the inland water table and the water body water level. So that water flows naturally and seeps up into the surface water. And this process has been identified as a source of nitrogen to surface waters in many water bodies. And it's the surface water nitrogen pollution and the cascade of negative effects like eutrophication, that is a direct result of groundwater nutrients entering Hog Creek. So we've previously found these areas with elevated nutrients and elevated discharge rates. These are areas that are transferring the highest nitrogen load. And so we have ongoing direct groundwater, pore water, and surface water measurements to provide high resolution nitrogen loading information. In our current phase, we will be monitoring these shoreline areas and doing inland site characterization on specific properties. And this work is just complementary of other efforts in the region and builds upon prioritization of impaired water bodies and builds on modeling data. Our work really ground truths some of the modeling data. So the work that is really relevant to this permit application and to the trustees is the measurements that are collected in the Hog Creek itself. We use this, we work with our subcontractor right now who has been doing some of the monitoring. There were additional measurements collected in May, and they use pore water evaluation probes that get probed into the sediment and measure in situ conditions of temperature and conductivity. And then when there is the presence of submarine groundwater discharge, then there are samples taken for nutrient analysis, and we combine the nutrient concentration and the flow rate of water coming in, and we calculate nitrogen loading. So from our Hog Creek Phase 1 report, we reported specific areas and specific estimated pounds of nitrogen per year. In some areas, such as in that northeast corner, we found over 200 pounds of nitrogen per year, whereas in some other areas, there was actually water from the surface water going back into the sediment. So we found negative rates, and so that's where we get some of the negative values there. But in general, this data really shows that the nitrogen loading is not uniform everywhere, and the whole water body, like we've prioritized the whole water body and found these areas where we're really getting high nitrogen loads, and those data will be updated with the information that we have as of 2024. Then with that information, we're going to go inland, and this requires participation by specific property owners, which we have a few specific property owners who are on board with this. This involves Cornell's well drilling team using our geoprobe to install shallow water table monitoring wells and deeper profile wells. The wells are then sampled at multiple depths to understand the vertical distribution of the nitrogen. And they also facilitate the collection of hydrogeological information that informs the PRB design. And we also get a land surveyor to survey in the wells, and this helps with the groundwater velocity information. So this is kind of a schematic of why it's important to do these wells in a couple different areas on the property. We need to determine the hydraulic gradient, which then informs the groundwater velocity. And that's a really important factor because the PRB needs to be designed so that water spends a specific amount of time in contact with the permeable reactive barrier media. And I didn't mention this earlier, but PRBs work with naturally occurring microbes that once we supply the right conditions with natural materials such as wood chips, those microbes do the nitrogen removal naturally. So we're introducing native materials, wood chips and gravel that are sourced locally. And by supplying those conditions, that facilitates the nitrogen removal. It gets converted into nitrogen gas, which is already 80% of our atmosphere and is completely harmless. As part of...
I have a question about the gradient on the slide you just covered. Is that the slope of the land? It's like, it's the change in height over the change in, what is that, length?
So the hydraulic gradient is the change in water table height over the distance between our wells.
Okay. And how does that change occur? I mean, how is that slope being created?
It's not a slope, it's groundwater.
That's the water the slope of the water table is wherever whenever you're further inland, there's going to be a higher water table than when you're close to the shoreline. So water is naturally flowing from further inland to the nearest water body with this naturally established gradient that is just naturally occurring in the groundwater table.
Thank you. So it's naturally occurring and you're exploiting that natural lay of the land, so to speak.
Yes, and that's what makes the permeable reactive barriers passive. Water is flowing through them passively via this gradient. And as part of the initial work that we did within Hog Creek, we also identified from 2020 to 2021, we identified a large patch of ulva along the western shoreline. And we reported on this in the phase 1 report. And the area was quite significant. So in our CPF application, we proposed to do an ulva harvest as part of nutrient bioextraction to provide water quality benefits. And I'll hand it off to Kim and Kim to talk about the rest.
Thanks, Molly.
Okay, yes, thank you, Molly. So we'll get back to ulva in just a minute, but I just wanted to give kind of an overview. As Molly mentioned, there is an education and outreach element to this project, which is important. You toss around words like PRB is a lot of, community members don't know what we're talking about or understand, the groundwater system in general. So we thought it would be, really important to add an element of it to this. So we're doing a bunch of community outreach events, social media aspect of things. We're in the process of developing print materials that could be distributed as well. We've done some school programs to reach some of our local East Hampton youth students, and we'll be doing a little bit more of that this fall as well. We did an art and awareness event, and of course the Ulva collection workshop that we're talking about today. So next one, Molly. So the status of all of this, as I mentioned, we did a great education program with the students at John Marshall back in May. Our educator, Ella, actually saw the entire 5th grade and engaged them in a great kind of intro to groundwater and PRBs on a digestible level, and also got to present on bioextraction and important of different seaweeds and things that we do in that regard too. And they actually created seaweed pressings from some of the subset samples that we found in Hog Creek and turned it into art. And we had a wonderful event over at Ashwa Hall back in July. You might have read about it or seen it, or maybe even joined us at it, but it was a great opportunity to kind of raise some awareness of some of this work in a more, fun, accessible way. So that was a great accomplishment we had recently. As I mentioned, we're working with some print materials. So up there is an example of one of the fact sheets we're working on developing. We're going to be doing some filming of some of the field work and hopefully the Ulva collection events for inclusion in our On the Water in the Field show. And a variety of other media tasks as well that could help spread the word about this project and why all this is important. So that's where we stand with some of the overall education and outreach related events. But I think one of the most significant opportunities will be to involve people in a hands-on way with some of this ulva removal events that we may be able to do. There are some interesting developments that happened this summer that I think, can we go to the next one, Molly? I think at this point, yes, I'm going to hand it over to Kim Manzo, who this is her expertise, part of our habitat team here, in terms of we've seen a bit of a shift in the population of seagrass and macroalgae species in the creek that might impact our plans. But I'll hand it over to Kim to explain a little bit more and how that might impact our plans here.
Yes, thank you, Kim. So just based on our early, field excursion to get a feel for what, was happening earlier this year with spring growth of seaweed, we noticed that there wasn't a huge amount that had started yet by mid-June or so. And it seemed to be, with eyes on the ground around there, that it was a lot less of a buildup than the previous 2 years already at that point. So we feel like this year there doesn't seem to be as heavy of a biomass, at least at this point. So in that way, we feel pretty good because at least we haven't sort of missed that window of opportunity. But we still are planning on trying to have some removal events that involve the public if possible. So potentially in, late August and again in September, if we can involve school groups. We have some issues with some, access to a lot of these areas. So that's one issue we might have with school groups. But anyway, and we have another development with regarding Rupia, which I'm going to speak about in a bit. Okay, Molly, you can keep going. So based on Molly's results, you could see in that background photo there where the largest, biomass of ulva was found in previous years for this project. We had evaluated that this year. There doesn't seem to be that same accumulation at this point, but we did notice that there is ulva as well as Cladophora, which is a similar nuisance green algae species. Both of them are known to, show up in eutrophic conditions, fast growing, take on nutrients, really quickly. And so, yes, that was one great observation we made in the field. It's not just ulva species we're dealing with. There's another green as well. That's probably just as equally, as an issue, so that they can be treated the same. And yeah, so of course, we do feel that, we haven't necessarily reached our peak yet in terms of when, but the biomass might peak this summer. Very often we don't see peaks until late August and sometimes into September based on, water temperatures and nutrient loading and things like that. So there's still opportunities for us to harvest in here. All right, next, Molly.
Hey, Molly.
Yep.
Jim Grimes here. Hey, have you guys given some estimates of how much weight in terms of the bulk mass and/or pounds of actual nitrogen you anticipate to take out of Hog Creek? And if this is sort of a hands-on community benefit type thing, what do you truly expect to pull out of here? Is this a measurable benefit to Hog Creek, or is this a feel-good project?
I think that Kim would better suited to answer that as far as like how much we would be potentially removing as far as biomass.
Yeah, so I think when this started out, seeing that, again, most of that, this task came to be based on the observations from a couple years ago. So obviously systems change from year to year. But the intention is to, we thought we'd be doing a wide scale event and definitely have a measurable impact. Kim's going to get into in the next few slides. The whole process of quantifying and sending out some samples to really, again, quantify that to give you a full answer. But I think kind of as a next step, if we did get the approval to continue with this, we would get out there and do a more detailed survey of where we are now, again, getting more close to that peak bloom season, and then we could better assess that. But I mean, regardless, coming out of the system rather than...
What methodology do you think that you're going to use for this work? Is this a hand?
Yes, we weren't planning on doing anything, any mechanical harvests. It was going to be just hand harvest using various nets and rakes. We have access to 2 boats, so we were going to kind of use runner boats to go to the shore, have people, in kayaks or paddle boards in some cases waiting out, depending on where the actual collection areas end up being, because we did observe it all the way up into the headwaters. So we would need to plan that out. But yes, it was all intended to just be, hand harvest power here.
Okay, so why haven't you considered using mechanical means here?
I think it was just we don't have access to that within Cornell. And again, this being part of the education and outreach opportunity, we wanted to have it be an opportunity that people could actually get involved. We do a lot of these kind of community workshops, as you know, with our eelgrass restoration and building oyster reefs. And we really find it to be a really meaningful opportunity to educate the public while they could actually play a hands-on role in doing something. But if we did see it, like it was a couple years ago, and it continued to be that large-scale collection. But I think, again, for the purposes of this project, what we budgeted and what the intentions were, we obviously want to make a measurable difference, but it also does have that, feel-good education aspect of it as well. So it's a little bit of both.
Well, no, the reason I'm asking this is I've seen these sort of manual projects done in the past. I've looked at the data of what actually got harvested and recognized that when you actually honed out the actual poundage of real nitrogen, it was sort of didn't move the needle. Now, I'm just assuming you're aware that the trustees basically endorse a project on Georgia Pond, which has used a mechanical harvester, which is right in the community, which is a piece of equipment that is designed specifically for the type of work that you're doing here. And in Georgia, I think our poundage in gross weight, I believe, fell somewhere around 60,000 pounds in Georgia Pond. And if you've got a plethora of Photophora of the other, some of these other sort of nuisance plant that you're trying to do a bioextraction on, would you consider doing something that actually is real and is measurable? you can do your educational aspects here, but it's always nice on one of these projects when you can step away from it and see something that's real and demonstrable in terms of results.
Yeah, I think that's something that could be considered in the future, but we also, as Kim's going to get to, there's a widgeon grass component now, which is, actually a beneficial grass that we're seeing in there now. So it's also a matter of not wanting to necessarily just take out every species. So it would allow us to kind of target in on what specific, the macroalgae that we're trying to get as well. But again, we want to study now, and that could be another, jumping off point for a future phase 2 is to get a better idea of the biomass and the overall, makeup of the water body in terms of what it's looking like, if it's shifting towards different species, or if we really are seeing these giant, mats of vulva like we did a couple years ago when we proposed this. Again, we could think about scale and methodology, but with the minimal task-oriented budget that's affiliated with this too, it was never intended to be a large-scale kind of mechanical project, but it's not to say it can't be considered in the future, that's for sure.
I have a question about your timeline. You're looking at between August and September to do the removal, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have an estimate of effort for this? How many people hours are you estimating it will take to, because you have a very complex timeline. Are you going to have a lot of people there to do this? Or?
Yeah, so we're also dependent, access to the site is another challenge. There's not great, we're working and Molly's helping facilitate with the property associations getting some, access. And again, as you know, it's a lot of, private property, residential around there, a lot of the town-owned areas. It's a little questionable in terms of, access and a lot of, potential tick exposure and a little interesting trying to get a vessel down there. So we're kind of, we were thinking of targeting this as a, not a huge 100 people on the creek trying to do this. It's more suited for a more controlled group, and that's why we had proposed to do 1 to 3 events to, make it make sense in terms of the logistics and what we're working with in terms of the site, and of course also the ulva that exists or doesn't at the time when we're trying to do this. But before we get too far into that, we wanted to, see if we had the support of the trustees to even, take those next steps and really dive into the logistics a little bit further.
I think I just following up on Patrice's questions here. Your presentation and is reflected a little bit in your application. I think we would like a little bit more specifics to add to your application, like the number of people involved, the method of harvest, how you're going to store it, how you're going to take it away, method of harvest, how you're going to access the pond, the anticipated beginning dates and end dates, how the volunteers are going to be managed, question of insurance. So, some specifics I think need to be filled into the application.
Yeah, we need the tactical plan because we understand conceptually what you're trying to do, but how much can you actually accomplish in that 2-month period? Are you going to try to remove as much as you can, and that would be, the sample that you're going to get? Or are you going to try to be more aggressive and say, I want to remove like 25% or 50%, and that's your target?
So I think as a next step, again, we were hoping to have some level of approval before we went too far in that direction, but Kim and I are scheduled to do another field visit to get out there because, again, we haven't been out there in the past month or so, so we wanted to get a better assessment and at that time, take a better survey, and then we could provide additional, more detail in terms of what we would expect to be harvesting, and then that could translate also in terms of, how far we'd want to cast the net in terms of public involvement. But again, this was written in more as an education and outreach task, so it was never really designed to be, a giant effort, as big as it possibly could be, because we're working within the parameters of what the proposal and budget was for this element of things. And it was also trying to figure it out, for this site specifically, all these different field-based workshops that we do. We have challenges with, again, access, all of these things that we're discussing. So we didn't want to go too big, too fast. We wanted to, see how it worked with doing, again, the 1 to 3 smaller scale workshops. So I would say off the bat, we were never looking to involve more than 20 to 25 people at any given time. And we really wanted to start more, with the community members who have access to get into the creek from their own homes, working with ideally local high school group, and again, some just volunteers that we have liability waivers, we have, the whole gamut in terms of used to working with the public and getting them on the water and in the water working with us. So we would take all of those things into consideration. We could certainly write that up in a little more detail to make everyone more comfortable with the permit application. If that's what the next step is determined, we're happy to do that and could come back with more detailed information. But we were approaching it from the other end to just make sure it seemed like something that would be supported before we poured the work into that. But we could certainly do that, and we will.
I think it would really help us if the application was more specific around the removal of the macroalgae. The other part is fine, I understand, but this one is a bit vague on your application. And like, where, Jim's question, how are you going to remove that? How are you going to get that out of there? After you pile it on a tarp, but then how do you get it out of there? You're not going to leave it there.
No. So yeah, we're in discussions working with a local nursery to get it trucked out and composted. So Kim was going to go into this a little bit more as a result of her remaining slides here, if we want to go back to that. But we can certainly again put that in writing in detail, so it's a little more transparent. We had a plan and idea in our head, but I get it. If it's not in the actual permit application, it's hard to assess that. So we could do that.
I think the success of a project like the one you're proposing is really enhanced by the amount of planning you do up front, and and just thinking it through really carefully how it's going to work out. So that's where I see if you want to look at the application again and put more detail in there, or we can help you with that. But it's just hard to envision how this is going to happen. The other question I have is around.
So maybe we could get back to sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the question around the insurance for people, how they're going to be trained, all that is still, we need to understand that, how they're going to be trained, when they're going to be there, what kind of liability insurance you'll have, or workman's comp, or whatever you need to do.
I think it's a sort of a standard request of our permits that, the permittee carry liability, workman's comp, insurance. I think we would basically just ask to be added to the policies as an additionally insured entity.
We're used to, accustomed to doing that. Yeah, we could certainly, once you detail what you need, we would send that over to our underwriters, and we could list you as additional insured. And yes, we have a liability waiver, and we could put whoever we want on that too. We were already working through that with the property association, who had the same questions. So again, it was all kind of in the works, but we will do a better job of explaining that in the permit itself. And it might be helpful for Kim to finish her remaining slides, because she does go into a little bit of that too in terms of the actual detail and the methodology we were envisioning for this too. But again, once we get out to the site, again, we could tighten up all of that and write it out in more detail, so it's there on the record with the permit application.
Okay, great.
Good, thank you.
Great.
All right. So actually, can you go back, Molly? I just wanted to go through. I don't think I fully finished up with all of this. So yeah, our harvesting methods are gonna, depend on how much biomass we need to harvest. The plan is to have, a Cornell vessel being the main vessel, and then potentially working with kayakers, who can potentially offload the seaweed into our vessel, and then we can be the ones going back and forth to shore, offloading the larger amounts. Then we can have a team onshore, doing wet weights. And then I'm also going to have some samples pulled for nitrogen analysis for each harvest that we do, and probably multiple from each harvest from different maybe areas of the creek, just to see if we get different nitrogen results and get a nice average, so that we can come up with an estimate of how much nitrogen will be removed through bioextraction by removing this algae. So yeah, we mentioned access is really limited. So we were initially really hoping to get school groups involved. We have a high school group that is ready, signed up to go. But some of the headwater locations where we would like to have them to access are really pretty hairy, and tick exposure and things like that are going to be an issue we would want students to get involved in. So it might be more of getting, our own core volunteers together and recruiting more volunteers from East Hampton area to get this work done. And it's all going to depend on our analysis next time we go visit to see what kind of biomass we're looking at least in the coming month. And then we'll have to go back and do another analysis for September to see if we need to increase the amount of volunteers we're going to need for our harvest events. And yeah, the plan is to compost the seaweed. So yeah, it's not all just going to get dumped on shore and left there. The plan is to, take wet weight measurements. It'll probably be in large fish totes at a time, and those will be loaded into a truck and brought to our nursery partner, where we're gonna hopefully come up with a really nice compost. We can also look into having that compost tested to make sure that it could be used for, gardening certain vegetables and things. Otherwise, it might be better served as an additive to a mulch or something like that. If it has high levels of metals or something, which some seaweeds do, absorb. So that would be a concern potentially for using in food gardens. But yeah, so that's good for now. All right, Molly, you can continue. So yes, we have this new development now. So our eyes on the ground have told us that we have a lot of rupia or widgeon grass growing this year, which hasn't been seen here in several years, if not many, many years. I remember working in this creek, probably almost 20 years ago, I think 19 years ago, when there was very, very little eelgrass left and a little bit of rupia mixed in. It was kind of a mixed cultured bed at that point as the eelgrass was starting to disappear. But I have not heard or seen any rupia since then. So this is kind of an exciting, turn, because this could show that we're having improved conditions in this creek. Now, the rupia usually is growing closer to the mouth of the creek, kind of near where that sandbar area is, but kind of off the deeper edge, in a similar depth zone that maybe eelgrass could potentially grow in. So, yes, so as I mentioned, it can be an indication that water quality is improving. Rupia is known as a pioneer species, so very often in areas that had some type of a disturbance, rupia can be one of the first species to come in and sort of start conditioning that area, and it often creates conditions that are more suitable for eelgrass to then recruit in. So we've seen this a lot on the South Shore bays. It's very typical. So that being said, this is only 1 year's observations, right? So we would love to just, continue with our harvesting work with ulva and cladophora to the best extent we can. Depending on how much biomass grows this year, we will deploy as many volunteers as needed and get that job done. We'd also just like to at least maybe utilize, if we don't need as many harvest dates as we had proposed, we might be able to use one of those dates instead to further study the rupia extent in Hog Creek. So at least get an idea of, the area it's covering right now. We could map it out, and also an idea of the density of the rupia this year. So we have something to compare to in future years in case, we want to continue on with this work. And like I said, this might be an indication if we see this rupia, continuing to increase in density, it could be a sign that we might be able to seed eelgrass in this creek in the future. So this is really good news. I don't know if that's something that, the town would be interested in, but it's, I know eelgrass existed there not that long ago, about 20 years ago. So I'm sure that would be something that the associations and everything would be really excited to see. So like I said, we only have 1 year's worth of growth. It is an ephemeral plant, so it's really more like an annual, but it does only pop up when conditions are right. So hopefully the conditions are going to continue to, improve in this area, and we'll see this rupia occurring year after year. And yes, okay, Molly, you could go next. And that's it. All right, so any questions?
I had a question with the PRBs. This is kind of a simple question, but do you just leave them, or do you change them every few years, or replace the wood chips?
So the wood chips are set to last for decades. We mix wood chips in with gravel, and those materials stay below ground. There's no plan to remove them. They just very slowly provide a carbon source for microbes. And they've been shown to last for decades.
Thanks.
I'm inclined to, if the board feels this is appropriate, I'm inclined to, offer a motion to, permit this project subject to some of the detail that we've asked for. Is that something the board can live with? Or I guess what I'm thinking is if we leave this till the next meeting, there may be an overlap between when they want to do some of this work and when we permit it. So
I would second it.
I have no problem with that. I just think how we use this permit document in other, permitted applications, we use it sort of as a project management document. So what we have received is it's not exactly what we need. And
that's why, subject to some more of the detail that we've discussed.
It needs to be more specific to this macroalgae removal.
I also think that, I support this, but we should get it right, because this is not going to be the only project. There's going to be a string of these projects if this is successful. So, gathering the information we want with this one is what we should do. I'm sure they're going to want to do this other places.
Yeah.
So let's just get a template down.
Maybe we can set a tight timeline. I know it puts pressure on the people who put this application together, but maybe we can request like within the next week. Is that doable?
Mm-hmm. We're not asking for a lot. I mean, you put much more content into that document than we need. We need the simple things like, how are you going to access it? How are you going to remove it? Where are you going to put it? Things like that, tactical aspects. And how many people are going to be doing the work, that sort of thing, and the beginning and the end date. And then we know when it commences and we know when it finishes. So that's sort of the idea.
Can we provide a list of the information that we're looking for in order for them to be able to complete this as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we can. I think we just need to have it, because our form is very succinct.
Right.
And so when you paste a lot of content into it, it's not what we're looking for.
So I guess Kim Barber will send you a list of some of the specifics we'd like to see addressed to be included in the permit. And
That's
hopefully,
great, yeah.
Are you
we
making a
might have a
motion?
little back and forth, with,
Right.
but hopefully we can get this done by the end of the week.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because as mentioned, we kind of have this all up here and in our, internal plans, but we just need to, solidify that and get that in writing, which I totally understand. So we could certainly do that.
Yeah, and I'll be available if you have any questions. I'd be happy to work with you on this.
Okay.
Great. I'll take you up on that. Yeah, but having that list will be super helpful. And then we could prioritize that and we should be able to turn that around, no problem, in the next day or two.
What was the motion, John?
Hey, just real quick, just based on the board's feedback, I think it would be a more simple process to approve a more complete application. So I just have, just for the Kims and Molly up there, is there some sort of milestone timeline that it would really benefit you guys to have an approval today? Or are you okay from a timeline perspective if we wait till the next meeting to give you guys the opportunity to refine this application? Just because from a motion perspective, I think it's a little bit convoluted. It would just be a little cleaner if we had a more complete application.
Our next meeting is the 26th, I
Yes.
think.
When is the next?
20th.
Oh, yeah, that should be fine. Because me and Kim are going to go out in the next 2 weeks to, again, do our better assessment anyway, and that'll help dictate, so we have a little bit of time. And as Kim mentioned, we don't think we even necessarily peaked with the biomass for the summer yet. So there's still benefit to be doing this, into September. And with our desire to get some of the East Hampton High School students involved, the timing works better for that anyway. So it wouldn't be holding it up, but it's good to hear that it sounds like there's a high degree of confidence that it would be supported if we could get all the rest of those details tightened up in the permit application itself. So that's what we need for now to double down on our efforts to get it tightened up and finalized here and start to put some dates together.
One more thing, you could think of this as sort of a proof of concept. So this project that you do in August and September, you may want to repeat it next year, and you'll know a lot more about how to execute this kind of a project once this is under your belt.
Yes, exactly. So we haven't, again, done this level of work in this specific water body. So every place is different. That's why we didn't want to promise 100 people and a massive, collection event. We wanted to take our time and do it right and do it safely and do it, per the regulations of everyone involved here. So absolutely, it'll be good to hopefully get it under our belt and be able to make it easier for the next go rounds if we continue the work.
Good. Great. All right, so we'll address this at the next meeting then.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for your time, and we will get that information over to you very shortly and keep progress going here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. All right.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. All right, next, we have Lori Petrosky. Lori? Hi. She wants to sublet her Lazy Point home at 241 Shore Road, lot 16S. Local resident Kevin Boyle, year-round. Chris, have you looked at any?
I looked at this, there's no issue here. Actually, no, Casey Boyle, young family man, has a son, I believe, who's my daughter's age. So I reviewed this, everything looks good, he's a resident, and no issue with the sublease.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Who made a motion?
Patrice.
I second.
Thank you.
Thank you. I
See
bought
you,
the
Nika.
Lazy Point house, about almost 2 years ago, and I like the idea of year-round local housing. So that's, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Old business, East Hampton Fire Department Annual Main Beach Fireworks Fundraiser. They changed the date to this weekend from
Yeah,
last
to
weekend
17.
because of the weather. So I guess this is just some information.
Do we need to sign it again, or?
No, I don't think so. Blue Green Algal Bloom updates.
Oh, yeah, we just got some additional numbers from Dr. Gobler's lab find them. So, let's see, on July 29th and 30th, there were counts registered at Wainscott Pond of 447.21 micrograms per liter, and at Pond Lane Pond of 97.39 micrograms per liter. And just more recently, on August 5th, there was reading in Wainscott Pond of 589.45 micrograms per liter, and a reading in Fort Pond, fairly low, 34.98 micrograms per liter. I think there should be testing in the Lionhead ponds probably this week. They're doing, Lionhead ponds are being tested on bi-weekly schedule. Wainscott Pond's being tested on a weekly schedule. So counts in Wainscott Pond are continually rising. The readings in the pond, in the Lionhead ponds are a little erratic. We've only seen blue-green algae counts showing up in Pond Lane Pond, not in Swan Pond. That's pretty consistent throughout the summer. So it's good news for those ponds. Not such good news for Wainscott Pond. But that's that.
Okay, thanks, John. All right, next we have a bonding resolution. As you're aware, the day after our last meeting, we received notice that there was a second judgment placed upon us. I sent out an email notifying everybody. You all agreed that we should go ahead and bond for this. So we have a resolution approving a signatory for this. If you don't mind, I'll go ahead and read it. Jen, you were going to say something? No? All right. Resolution to authorize Francis J. Bach as signatory of appeal bond. Whereas the trustees are currently named defendant in civil proceedings, Seaview at Amagansett Limited et al. Versus trustees of the freeholders in commonality of the town of East Hampton et al. Index number 0347114/2009, pending the Suffolk County Supreme Court, the action. And whereas on June 25th, 2024, the Honorable Thomas J. Whalen entered judgment into an action in favor of Seaview at Amagansett Limited, Dunes at Napeague Property Owners Association, Inc., the Tides Homeowners Association, Inc., and Whalers Lane Homeowners Association, Inc., in the amount of $32,060 in principal and prejudgment interest as the statutory rate of 9% per annum from June 8th, 2021, in the amount of $8,861.74, for a total amount of $40,921.74 against the trustees jointly and severally with the town of East Hampton, the judgment. And whereas the trustees intend to take an appeal from the judgment, and whereas to stay enforcement of the judgment pending appeal, the trustees are required to file an undertaking with the Supreme Court, Suffolk County. And whereas the trustees intend to and have applied for an appeal bond in the amount of $49,130, which represents the amount of the judgment plus 20% to account for post-judgment interest. And whereas to secure the appeal bond, the trustees are required to sign an indemnification agreement with the bonding company to secure said bond, and the trustees will designate a member of the board as signatory. Now therefore be it resolved, the trustees and the freeholders of the commonalty of the town of East Hampton shall designate Francis J. Bach, clerk of the trustees, as an authorized signatory on all indemnification agreements necessary to secure the appeal bond, that the trustees have approved the purchase of the appeal bond, and that the trustees have approved entering into and signing the indemnification agreement.
I would just put in a comment there, simply that when you're a signatory, you are signing for the board. Okay, so you are not agreeing that there is personal liability for the individual members. You are signing as the clerk of the Board of Trustees.
Mm-hmm.
So just to clarify that.
I have one other point where you say 49,130 represents the amount, which would be 40,921.74 plus 20. That must be 20%.
Yes.
So when I do that multiplication, I don't get 49,130. I get 49. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you've checked it, but
Well, I agree with you. It's a little bit off.
okay.
But what happened was this has been submitted to the bonding company. This is the number that everybody's been working with. We also need a letter of credit from our bank. That's the number they've been working with. So
Okay.
that's why we have stuck with the 49,020.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Who seconded that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
All right, next we have committee reports, Acabonic, Springs General Store, ZBA hearing.
Well, yeah, I attended the Springs General Store ZBA hearing, and I was zoomed in because I still wasn't right. But basically, they're asking for a number of things about moving structures on the property, things that don't really, I don't think, concern us so much. They want to have all proposed structures be greater than 100 feet from wetlands, things like that, which are, you know, I agree with. But they also want to do a revegetation project, and they want to eliminate the kayak racks. And where you can get to the water from the kayak racks, that's where they're going to be doing some revegetation. They're going to remove some black locusts and some that are covered with honeysuckle, and they submitted a planting plan, you know, to what they want to do. So the problem is they didn't have our correct address or the tax map numbers on the form, the Board of Appeals, so they didn't have the trustees listed as
Adjacent property owner.
Yeah, they had us as owning property in Pussy's Pond, which is town property.
Who's they? Who's they?
The owner,
ZBA or
Bennett.
the owner?
They had it in the Montauk School District also.
So the only reason I'm bringing this up is I think maybe we should send them a letter and inform them that that's not our property, and that our, you know, we have claimed the bottomlands of Acabonic Harbor, and that's where the kayak rack revegetation is going to occur. It seems like they're not going to disturb anything, but, you know, if they, just that they know that we're an interested party in that.
Send a letter to who? The ZBA or the owner?
Yeah.
Well, the owner, I think, it came from their, Michael Sciano, environmental planner, InterScience Research Associates.
But it has to be verified by the ZBA what they're looking at and who the adjacent owners are, right? So I would think the appropriate recipient would be the ZBA.
Right, so I think we should write them a letter, or somehow inform them that this letter is probably the best way, that there was, a misstatement in the ownership.
Is this revegetation taking place on trustee Bottomland? Is it?
Now, it looks like it's all upland, John.
Sorry?
Looks like it all occurs upland. There's no emergent vegetation planned here. It's all.
It's all adjacent to our property.
Yeah, we should probably send the ZBA a letter. It's not the first time we've sent them a letter reminding them that we own
that.
Bottom
And when they,
some property owners to a lot of these projects.
because the map that they distributed with the plan for the revegetation, it doesn't list us on that view. I think I've always seen it, us being listed there. But just something, they're not going to start the re-veg yet. They're not through the planning process.
Well, I think you're just, John, if I'm correct, you want to write a letter just to advise the ZBA and their staff to adjust the record to reflect the inaccuracies.
Right.
So that we need notice.
We did get notice, but on the wrong property.
We got notice, but it was late, and it was addressed to the town of East Hampton on Panago Road. And then eventually it got to our mailbox, but that was like the day of the hearing, so.
This is a recurring thing with the ZBA, unfortunately.
Well, hey guys, if you're going to send the ZBA a notice, what I would suggest is CC the agent for the applicant, because these clearly are the errors made by, I think, the applicant's agent's InterScience, isn't it?
Yeah, you think they know that?
No, I know, it's pretty unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my only real observation from that interaction with the ZBA. They got approval for an IA septic system, which the owner was concerned that since they're slow on getting this project launched, that the funds might not be there when they're ready, and that which case he would not do the IA system. It's not required to, but so I think there will be funds.
He's looking for funds from
You're looking for funds from the town?
Yeah.
County.
You want to compose the letter?
Pardon?
Are you composing the letter?
Yes. Do you want me to?
Sure.
Great. I will definitely do that.
Okay. All right, mosquito larvae count updates.
We went out, well, I didn't go out, but the rest of the group went out on the 22nd of July. There wasn't much out there, and there was no treatment required. And then we went out also on August 5th. Again, there were few larvae found and no treatment required.
Good.
So,
They sent the notice out for aerial spray today, and we're not on it.
So is that because of previous treatment, do you think?
no, it's just because we're not finding, we didn't find larvae. We didn't find a lot of larvae.
That's so much rain. I'm surprised.
I was surprised. I thought we would find a lot on the 5th, but I think a lot of what triggers a hatch is the tide. That's why we go around the moon tides. And I guess the tide wasn't really very strong this last moon. So,
Each time we stop this, a treatment, it's good.
yeah, it is.
That's the whole purpose of the project.
Knock on wood.
All right.
We go out again next week.
Somebody, I just happened to hear, somebody made a very complimentary call about the program to the town board meeting with public comments.
That's good.
If you're going out, I'll go with you and see how it's done.
Sure.
Bring boots.
It's early.
All right, move on to administrative, payment of the bills. East Hampton Marina, $431.74 for fuel. Seacoast Enterprises, $17.88. Montauk Marine Basin, $671.62 for fuel. Riverhead Building Supply, $54.30. Optimum, $161.24. Intact Insurance, $11,407, renewal for a pump out boat vessel insurance. Do I have a motion?
Motion to pay the bills?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Minutes. We have minutes of May 31st, June 24th, July 8th, July 24th, ready to be reviewed. Has anyone had a chance to look at any of them?
I reviewed them. I have no problems with any of them.
I started to take a look at them. I had a couple of comments that I haven't made yet.
You want to table it?
Table it or approve them, subject to my comments. How do you want to handle it?
Just table it. Make your comments. Okay, anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I think everyone should start getting excited for the largest clam contest, which is coming up next month. So the last Sunday in September is our largest clam contest. That's 12 to 3 at the Amagansett Life Saving Station. There's going to be free food, chowder, clam pies, live music, a lot of other good stuff. So check out our website for any more information. And that's, again, the last Sunday in September.
We're going to get a new drone for the largest clam, or we're going to use the old one.
It's traditionally been well, that's been
We
used
already
for
have.
20 years. I
We
think.
got a throne, yeah.
We got it, we got one last year.
Unless we get a huge, really big clam, then we need a new throne. We'll see.
We'll have to get a clam sofa maybe.
Clam catch.
There's a clam pillow
Yeah, the pillow.
that John picked out last year. And a new crown.
All right. So you gotta come.
Anybody else? Do I have a motion to close?
Oh, I have one thing, actually. This Thursday, there's a video conference of the people that have been involved in the Accabonac Salt Marsh restoration efforts. If anybody's interested in attending, it's going to be at 10:30 in the morning, Thursday. It's a video, it's a Zoom thing, so Thursday.
Can you just post
27th.
the link on the town email? Or do you want to?
I can send it to everybody or just
Yeah.
whoever's interested. All right, I'll send you the link.
I think we have some interest in, perhaps trying to get them to do something by across from the watching room.
Well, I don't think this is at the point of influencing them which direction to take. I mean, there's been applications filed for proposals filed for funding, and I think this is following up on
See where we're going.
accepted proposals. So there's proposed work that's already been established for this particular, at this point.
So I got a notice that it's on the 27th.
Is that this Thursday? Oh, no, wait, you're right.
It's a week from, right?
Next Thursday.
10:30.
It's next Thursday, yeah.
Seventh is a Tuesday.
It is, you're right. It's the 27th, Tuesday. 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Yeah. I wasn't ready for it this week.
Something's this week. What's this week? Oh. This week at Thursday at 10 o'clock is the Peconic Estuary Program Technical Advisory Committee meeting. And I can't remember what it was, but there's a couple of interesting topics.
Is that a in-person or a Zoom meeting?
I think it's either.
They're interesting, fun.
Anything else? Motion?
I'll make a motion to close.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.